No, I don't agree with this. Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal do not deserve a perfect review score. For over a year now, I've been seeing Persona 5 and its glowing review scores, but I don't know what reality those come from, because it was a lot different for me. This started when I was at a friend's house watching him play Persona 5. I sat there for about 3 hours, just watching characters talk, and talk, and talk. Obviously this got to me. What the hell was this? In my frustration, I checked to see some reviews to see how other people felt about this game. So when I was met with only positivity, I reacted kinda like this. What the fuck? Okay. A disclaimer right here. And this is hard to say since I spent the better half of the year giving the game nothing but heat. But I really loved it. You shut up, Jude. Despite that, if you also love this game, then I am gonna criticize it as hard as the comments on John Boyega's Twitter. So yeah, if you can't handle your favorite game getting some negativity, I'd like to direct you to this very good video by RelaxAlax. So, why does this game have so many perfect reviews? Is it because of developers paying big review companies to give their game a good score? That's definitely a part of it, but even small reviewers are hell. People who aren't reviewers at all often give the game a full score. After playing it myself, the answer is because the good stuff in the game is really good. When people talk about this game, it's like how the British teach their history. They only talk about the good stuff and leave out the parts about slavery and oppression. I realize that's extreme, but you get the picture. Right, now it's time for me to point out the flaws in Persona 5. Because I literally have nothing better to do since we're stuck at home in a global pandemic. But just before that, I feel like I should lay out the concept of the game for anyone who hasn't played it, and might use this video as guidance on whether or not they should. At its simplest, the concept Persona 5 uses is the idea of a cognitive realm called the metaverse, a manifestation of human cognition. If a human's desires become distorted, then they have a palace form in the metaverse that they are the ruler of. The protagonists infiltrate the palaces and steal the ruler's treasure, which is the physical manifestation of their distorted desires. By taking this, they trigger a change of heart in the ruler, fixing their distortion. Also, they fight with personas, which is the manifestation of the user's personality. Believe it or not, this is why the game is called Persona 5. Okay, good. Persona 5 is much longer than it needs to be. The base game takes about 100 hours, and Royal is 115 hours. Normally, you'd see that and think it means more content to sink your teeth into. But a lot of the content in the game's first half is downright unnecessary. Persona wastes a lot of time on things that do not affect the overall plot at all. This results in a butt-ton of useless dialogue. It's simple things like introducing characters and starting their development that Persona 5 dwells on. For example, pretty much an entire palace is devoted to Makoto's introduction. She could just as easily have been introduced in conjunction with another character in the next palace. But instead we get an obnoxiously long, useless, and a dialogue-heavy cutscene to introduce her. Furthermore, the palace used to introduce her could be removed from the game entirely and have zero effect on the plot. It's this kind of dragging out of events that really pulls down the first half of the game. There are some great moments in the first half, but between all these, there are lots of useless character interactions that are honestly just draining to sit through. If you're going to play this game, take my advice. When you get to the buffet scene, just fast forward through to end that hell as soon as possible. Honestly, the game takes like 50 hours to even start properly getting to the main reason the narrative's events are even taking place. What about the gameplay? Well, I'm happy to report that once you've trudged through the sea of redundant text, you have a great gameplay system. But before I get to all that, I'll cover the few problems, since that's how I'm doing this video, with the problems first. The first problem, the bosses. Quite a few bosses in this game can be super tedious, in that their health bar goes down really slow. I mean, I'll start a boss fight and put Goku vs Frieza on in the background if you want a timeline of what they're like. You spend so much time doing the same thing over and over every turn, and it can become really frustrating. Some bosses have different phases where you switch up your playstyle, and that makes it more fun and engaging. On the other hand, you can just be met with a bad boss. When you reach the 5th palace, I can't say too much because of spoilers, but may God have mercy on your soul. Also, just a weird thing that happened to me on one boss. Some sort of bug occurred, I'm not sure what it was, that delayed a major damage dealing event from happening, and that caused me to have to whittle down the boss's health to its absolute minimum to trigger the event. I can't guarantee that this will happen to you, but I've seen enough people online talk about it to deem it worthy of mentioning. Next problem is mementos, because oh boy, we should talk about that. I'll say it flat out, it's boring. So boring. Mementos is Persona 5's large area, filled with ever-changing dungeons for you to traverse. I won't explain the full story behind it for those who want a surprise, but don't look forward to it. The problem with Mementos is that it's just a bunch of narrow corridors with enemies and some treasure. It's hard to blaze through it as enemies are often unavoidable, so there really is no stealth element like the palaces. Mementos is uninteresting to traverse and to look at. The music is also just a pain to your ears. On top of all of this, you're actually required to clear all of Mementos to get to the game's finale. Mementos is perfectly functional, but it just becomes the recurring killjoy of the game. Looking at all that's been said so far, that's a decent number of flaws. A game with this many downsides shouldn't have so many perfect scores. What is it about Persona 5 that makes people want to give it a flawless review, and just ignore the things I've mentioned? Well, after playing the game, I ended up finding out for myself. Remember when I said the plot is inconsistent in the first half of the game? Well, let me tell you about the second half. At the end of the 5th palace, the hell that is the 5th palace, it starts getting real. Before you know it, the game is hitting you with twist after twist. All of a sudden, the Phantom Thieves face much more dangerous threats as the game begins to reveal the purpose of their mission. You get the sensation that there's something much larger at play, waiting to reveal itself. Hell, the game even has you question the morality of taking hearts in the first place, leaving you to wonder, am I doing the right thing here? This really resonated with me, as I spent years wondering whether or not I should have taken that Dark Spyro Skylander from my friend back in the day. The game's core concept of stealing hearts is so sick. I don't even know how creative you have to be to even come up with that. It's just cool. The originality of the idea really sets the game apart from other JRPGs out there. The most gratifying part of the narrative is watching each character's development come to a peak. It's great to see just how far they've come in their journey that you were able to watch. Well, it's great for most characters anyway. It's 100% worth trudging through the sloppy pacing of the first half just to witness the story reach its true potential and show itself in all its glory. Let's be honest, this is a video game we're talking about here. What is the gameplay actually like? Well, it's pretty damn good. Persona 5's gameplay has 3 different parts: daily life, palace exploration, and battles. I'll start with daily life. In daily life, your main objective is to increase your relationship with the cast of the game. Each character is a confidant of a different type. Enhancing the strength of a certain type of confidant lets you summon stronger personas of the corresponding type. In addition, increasing your bond with members of your party unlocks different benefits whilst exploring a palace or battling. For example, if your bond is deep enough with Ryuji, he can shield you from a fatal blow in battles and also lets you plow through weaker enemies in Mementos. However, to unlock certain interactions with characters, you sometimes need a social stat of a certain level. Let's say you needed to fix something for a character to increase your bond, you'll need to have the right level of proficiency to do so. To increase your social stats, you just need to do daily activities like cleaning up, going to the cinema, or correctly answering questions in school. Most of these activities are just a quick cutscene, but some involve actual input, for example, the batting cages. Overall, daily life is very streamlined and actually quite entertaining as you interact with Tokyo in different ways. One criticism I do have is that when you find yourself with a lot of free time, the days can grow quite monotonous, and you'll probably end up just sitting playing video games in your video game. The second part of the gameplay is exploring the palaces found in the metaverse. It didn't occur to me until making this video, but Persona 5 is kinda a stealth game. As you explore a palace, you hide in the shadows from enemies, and the best part is, all you need to do to move from one hiding place to another is press a button. Then it makes this cool noise and you zip over there like nothing. The game does not discourage you from facing enemies, instead you ambush enemies to gain advantage in battle. The stealth is more about heightening your chances of winning a battle than avoiding them altogether. In Persona 5 Royal, they gave Joker a grappling hook, which is basically a way of making crossing a certain area in a palace way more cinematic. I mean, look at this dude. It's cool. Finally, some palaces have puzzles for you to solve, which are mostly pretty cool, unless again, you're in the 5th palace. Like, just, God help anyone who's in there. Moving on, last, but definitely not least, is the battles. The foundation of Persona's battles doesn't really require an explanation. It's turn-based, and you use different moves and items to attack, heal, and buff stats. Just your usual stuff. You have the option of using your persona, your weapon, or your gun to attack the enemy. Unlike Pokemon, you can just shoot your enemies if you feel like it. If you exploit an enemy's weakness, you can knock them down, and if you knock them all down, you can initiate a hold-up. In a hold-up, you have 3 options. You can hit them with an all-out attack, which ends with a cool piece of art if the attack lands the killing blow. If you're feeling merciful, you can ask them for money and items in exchange for their life, or to put it simply, you mug them. My favorite option in a hold-up is trying to recruit the enemy to gain a persona. To capture a persona, you have to negotiate with them and pick the right dialogue options depending on their personality. This is way more engaging than just throwing a ball and hoping it works. Persona also has the baton pass mechanic. When you down an enemy by hitting its weakness, you get another move. With this move, you can choose to pass the baton to a teammate, which will recover their health and increase the power of their next move. If you exploit the baton pass correctly, you can hit the enemy 4 times in one character's turn. The best part of this mechanic is how stylish it is. The animation you use to show the baton being passed to the next team member is filled with charm, and when the aura flares up around them, you can't help but feel a bit excited. Unless you're playing Persona 5 where the baton pass does not increase attack and power at all, and you'll probably just never use it. Persona 5 Royal comes with the addition of Showtime attacks. Showtime attacks are basically just file smashes performed by 2 party members. If you couldn't tell by the name, they put on a show to perform a super powerful attack. Each attack portrays the character's personality and the relationship between them. These attacks can help speed up some longer battles as they do major damage. The animations are pretty entertaining to watch for the first time around, and are mostly pretty funny. But after the first time, you always just skip the show to move things along. We know that the gameplay is really good, but there's 2 other things Persona 5 offers that absolutely enhances the experience: music and art style. The art style of this game is super visually pleasing and unique. I'm not an artsy person, so I'm not the best person to convey why it's great, I just know it is. Every character and environment design has great attention to detail and is oozing with personality. On top of this, the game has an amazing soundtrack, which seems to perfectly complement the art, from when you're just doing regular stuff to the heat of battle. The passionate art style always gives a feeling of relaxation or excitement for every part of the game. Persona 5 is an amazing experience, and by the end, it's easy to forget or ignore the problems with the game thanks to the brilliant second half. But the shoddy pacing at the first half with its needless filler, the tedious boss fights, and mementos. These things should not be cast aside. If the fans of a game don't make the developers aware of these problems, how will they know to improve future installments? The fans should be the harshest critics. Fans know the series the best. They know what it needs, and that's why they should be the first in line to voice their problems. It's okay to love Persona 5. I love it. But you need to stop loving it for something that is not, and start loving it for something that it is. Wait, they made a Persona 4?